We're going to have a panel today centered mostly around Bitcoin and the concept of Bitcoin Layer 2s. We got some very fun, knowledgeable, educated, highly valuable people here on the panel. And so as we get started, I'll let everyone introduce themselves. I'm Jon. I'm a co-founder at Hyperlane, which is an open framework for interoperability. And I'll pass it on to you, Roc.
Hello, I'm Roc Zacharias, co-founder of QuickSwap, CEO of Lunar Digital Assets, which is an incubation marketing firm. Incubated and marketed for a lot of projects, kind of here, some of the projects, Polygon, QuickSwap, Doge Chain, which is a Polygon Edge layer 2 of Doge, and now incubating zkBTC, which is why I'm here to talk about Bitcoin layer 2s.
I'm Carsten from Cartesi, and I've been playing around with BitVM and kind of been helping to create the first zk verification in BitVM 1, and yeah, basically seeing kind of where this Bitcoin L2 thing can go to.
Thank you. My name is Zhixi. I come from BOB, stands for Build on Bitcoin. We're a Ethereum layer 2 specialized for Bitcoin innovation, and my role here is ecosystem growth lead.
Hey, Kyle Rojas. I lead the business team at Avail, where we're working on 3 products, such as data availability, which we'll talk about, unification across different rollups and different VMs, as well as shared economic security. And before this, I led the business team for the Graph, which is an indexing solution, and before that, Wall Street, before that, military. So I'm old.
I'm not going to give my full history. I'm JJ. I work at dWallet Labs. We're an MPC network, and I'm heading up BTC orientated stuff with business development.
So we're here to talk about Bitcoin Layer 2s. So I'll direct this question mostly to UZT, to you, Carsten, to some extent to y'all. What does it mean to be a Bitcoin Layer 2 or a Bitcoin focused Layer 2? What are the operational challenges that come with it? Like, how do you enable it, right? In the past, we've had approaches like Rootstock that involved like a certain amount of a multisig with a number of different guardian entities playing a part in it. But we're in a different world. That was 2017. Today in 2024, we have this budding category of Bitcoin Layer 2s. Carsten, you're working on BitVM. What does it really mean to be a Bitcoin Layer 2?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So this is a great question, and my response might be controversial. So Bitcoin Layer 2, I think it's a very, very loosely defined term, because what does it mean to be a Layer 2, right? For it to be a Layer 2, there needs to be a Layer 1 that have access to the information from the Layer 2. So there is not really, like when we think about actual Bitcoin Layer 2, the only thing that qualifies will be Lightning Network, which is a protocol that's directly on top of Bitcoin payment channel supporting for one purpose, which is peer-to-peer exchange. And now most of the so-called Bitcoin Layer 2, including ourselves, should be more defined like sidechains. And actually, it's interesting because Satoshi, actually, in his writing, he discussed like visions related to like merge mining, which basically means he already have vision of the existence of other chains that is connected to Bitcoin in different ways. So at Bob, I don't want to talk too much about how we are differentiating from other Bitcoin Layer 2. We are a Ethereum rollup. We built on Optimism stack, but we connect to Bitcoin through tools, for example, like Light Client. And we are going to also introduce things like merge mining, which will enable us to submit the Bob chain state back to Bitcoin in a way that we're connected to Bitcoin as sidechains. My vision with Bitcoin Layer 2 is there are so many ways that you can introduce UTXO to users and developers outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And what different type of, the reason why there are so many type of Bitcoin layer 2s exist and why this is a good thing is so that we can introduce more people into Bitcoin. But until we have something like BitVM that is readily available and actually being able to be accepted and understood by developers and users, I don't think we can call anything, unless it's Lightning, a very strict term Bitcoin layer 2s.
Yeah, so the question was, I was working on some BitVM stuff, and this is the thing about, let's say, also Bitcoin layer 2s in this particular case. It's really difficult to say anything about the characteristics of these networks until we have practical implementations. We have had BitVM 1, where kind of like people were kind of like finding out very quickly that it will take almost like 30 or 40 weeks to settle, which is a bit of a problem, right? Because we don't have this whole chess clock thing that Ethereum basically enables. And now we have BitVM 2, which kind of enables, technically speaking, within, let's say, 7 to 14 days to potentially settle, but it can only run a zk verify in this particular case. So everything that comes down to this whole innovation, like BitVM has inspired over 2,000 people in the Telegram channel, like the BitVM chat. Some people are not part of that channel at the moment for various reasons. But really seeing that, let's say, community forming around BitVM and people actually trying to make practical implementations with this new primitive, which they can because it's permissionless. They don't need to ask anybody. They don't need to ask the miners. They can just do it. And I think that we're still like, let's say, about a year away from really, really practical implementations of, let's say, BitVM-based layer 2s.
Can I jump in? So I think it's interesting. So in Bitcoin, we're seeing the same debates about L2 sidechain happen as we saw in Ethereum, right? So we're here at this this event is Avail and Polygon and Gelato, and we had these debates in Polygon and Matic 5 years ago. You know, it's you know the ETH kind of maxis were like, no, it's a side chain. It's not a true L2. And we all kind of fought over that and debated it. And I was kind of like, who cares? I think it's like an L2, but whatever. Over time, we did settle on, no, Polygon POS is not an L2. It's a side chain. And now but then over time, it upgraded to like Polygon zkVM, same kind of stuff that you guys are doing, like on Optimism and these. So, I think what we'll probably see happen is the same thing that we saw happen with Ethereum. You will start out like Bob as more of a side chain, and then over time, they will evolve and become more true L2s. And so zkBTC, which LDA is incubating, is actually a true L2 of ETH, similar to you guys, but instead of Optimism using Polygon CDK. And then it'll be a trustless side chain to Bitcoin, which sounds like also what you guys are doing with BitVM. Pretty cool to see.
Layer 2s have become a byword for like Bitcoin Season 2 or Bitcoin Renaissance. So it's not like many of the L2s are about bringing functionality to Bitcoin as opposed to garnering security or settling to Bitcoin. But I don't think we're seeing many L2s today, like you say, that are doing that. And like as these things develop and garner users, we'll probably see more of that. There's not a lot of like native use of Bitcoin. We're obviously seeing a lot of wrapping and bridging. I think there's something like 69 L2s in some stage of, yeah, like it's, I think there's, no, like that, yeah, that's what I've heard. It's like 30-ish in some level of deployment and like another 40 at the white paper level. So I think it's quite hard to say what it is when it's impossible for us to all read those white papers and dissect exactly what it is that they're trying to do. So yeah, I think it's still like a very new space. I mean, we're in a situation where like Bitcoin had like next to no funding a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. None of us would have been able to have this conversation. If you were talking about building on Bitcoin, you were talking about Rootstack or Stacks or Liquid or Lightning. That was it. That was the entire world. Right? That and like some very boring bips, you know? And now we're like we're having millions of dollars invested into L2s and ordinal like marketplaces, and we will see tons of Rune dexes, like no doubt. And obviously now staking is kind of coming up with Babylon Chain. And there's really a huge amount of money committed to Babylon Chain. I'm not sure what that number is today, but I've heard some outrageous numbers.
So it's interesting to see because, I've been in Bitcoin since 2015. And I coined the phrase, I think 7 years ago. I said, I'm Bitcoin maximalish, not maximalist, right? I think, a what? A Bitcoin moderate. Bitcoin moderate, I like that. Neo-maxi. Look, there we go. We're all coming together. So I got my Bitcoin pin under my American flag lapel pin. Anything other than maxi, yeah. So, by the way, I think maxis have their place. I see them as kind of the true north for the industry compass. But anyways, so about that. Yeah. A little bit religious, yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll stop there. But so it's just interesting to see how the culture changed so much over time. If you guys remember, like the maxis in say 2014, 15, they were like, okay, well maybe Monero is okay because it's a privacy thing, right? Then you go to like maybe 18, 19, 20, you had some people saying, well, maybe even including people like Peter McCormick and some of these, true maxis saying, well, maybe stable coins are okay because, in third world countries, they can't handle the volatility of Bitcoin. So use your Bitcoin as your store, but for day to day, you use your stable coins. That was an interesting one. I didn't expect the maxis to kind of like, okay, that. And then it all completely changed when ordinals came. And you had a total riff in the community. You had half the community saying, fuck you guys, this is garbage, you guys are pieces of crap. And then you had other half saying, well, maybe this is kind of interesting. And then I think that just opened it up. Once that happened, it was like, okay, open the floodgates, all the builders who, so I have LDA. For 7 years, we've been incubating projects. We never did anything with Bitcoin because there was no way to monetize it. There was no way to put your time into something and make money from it and get other benefits. As much as I love Bitcoin, I would just donate to Lightning Network devs and I'd donate to the devs. And sometimes we'd write papers about stuff to contribute, but we weren't really building stuff because how do you build a company around just like altruistic shit for Bitcoin? You couldn't, but now you could actually build stuff. So we're all here going, hey, we all love Bitcoin. We're neo-Bitcoiners and Bitcoin moderates and Bitcoin maximalists. And now we're all able to build really cool stuff, find ways to monetize it, and then contribute to Bitcoin like that. I think that was the beauty of Ethereum, was having tokens made it so you could actually incentivize the builders to build stuff. That's why there's orders of magnitude more builders on Ethereum, but now that's coming to Bitcoin.
So you brought something up that is interesting. Now, in your work, do any of the things that you work on actually leverage things like inscriptions or runes or any of the concepts to do the things more directly on Bitcoin? Or is it, some channel is open through Bitcoin and then you do everything in a EVM context or somewhere else?
The purpose of like a true layer 2 is for that information to settle on the settlement layer. And the reason you create a layer 2 in Ethereum or whatever settlement layers there might be is to increase throughput, decrease congestion, and lower fees for the end users. As well as some other things. But that's essentially what we're trying to get at. And you need that data to go onto the settlement layer as a source of truth. And that's what people are doing with data availability, where you're keeping execution settlement in the chain, let's say layer 2 rollup environment. They put transaction data and or state changes onto the DA layer, and a proof, whether optimistic proof or for Avail zk proof, a validity proof, goes onto that settlement layer. So that is the source of truth, because you can't have nodes creating new blocks unless you guarantee the correct transaction sequencing of previous transactions and blocks. And so, yeah, in that case, it does go directly onto Bitcoin, but can go anywhere, right? Those proofs can go to multiple settlement layers, which is exciting as well. So there can be resilient and redundant sources of truth as well. And then working with dWallet for native Bitcoin in rollups is extremely important. So it's not fucking wrapped Bitcoin. It's not mint and burn Bitcoin. That's not Bitcoin. You want native Bitcoin on layer 2. So therefore, that is really important that Avail's working with dWallet and others on. So staying true to like the actual Bitcoin vision of that single source of truth, the most decentralized aspect of this entire ecosystem by far, and then native Bitcoin. So I'd say that in the DA world, that's how there's other products Avail's building that's helping, but I'd say that's where I'll start.
Yeah, you did a very good job. Thank you. Yeah, so, I was brought to dWallet because I am a Bitcoin moderate. And when I met the COO and he'd sort of explained what he was doing, I'm a BD, so my technical level's sort of mid. But the first response from me is, oh my God, we can leverage Bitcoin. And by having signatures that can come from any chain, we can now build applications, and we don't have to have the Bitcoin come to us. We can sign for the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin can stay where it is. I can carry on holding my Bitcoin forever and leverage that for whatever cool ideas people come up with. So for me, the thing that I was most excited about was borrowing against Bitcoin natively, without compromising it. And because it's in your custody, it's your wallet, there are institutional applications potentially. But we're infrastructure, and I'm super pumped to get people to try and build these native use cases.
So I want to echo on both of you, but I also want to clarify this. So the question is about what we do with our work. That's okay. First of all, I agree very, very much with what you mentioned about I love the idea of borrowing against Bitcoin. This is gonna go a big circle with this conversation, but we always talk about Bitcoin standard. Think about things in Bitcoin standard and not in fiat standard. And until we have ways to actually collateralize UTXO, there is no Bitcoin economy. If there's the only thing that you can do with the Bitcoin is hodling it or selling it, if that's the only two options, then that's not enough for even traditional investors, even for people who's not into crypto, that's too boring. And to actually create an economy around it, we need things like stablecoin backed by Bitcoin, which has to be enabled by lending. And there are a lot of ways where you can collateralize things in terms of the custody or non-custodial solution. There's many different ways. And there are also a lot of users and just investors or whatever in the world that have different kind of risk appetite or different demand. And I want to echo on what you just mentioned about, how ordinals and ruins changed everything since last year, because we did see a drop in faith and interest in Bitcoin because there was nothing going on until all of a sudden inscription came up, and a lot of people. One of the things I like to say is inscription turned Bitcoin hodlers into Bitcoin users, and not only that nowadays we can collateralize Bitcoin, we can also collateralize inscriptions that's data and information that is inscribed on top of Bitcoin. So with ruins and NFTs, all of these things coming to Bitcoin. We're seeing more and more people who is interested in Bitcoin more than just as a store of value. People want to be creative about it. People want to see Bitcoin as a settlement layer. People want to use Bitcoin as a way to track history. People want to use sats as collectibles. A little bit of shilling here. How my work tie into this is we have different kind of representations of UTXOs. So there are people who hate, Bitcoins being wrapped. For example, what you said about wrapping Bitcoin. Me personally, I don't want to wrap all of my Bitcoin as well, for my own investment. But there are a group of people that actually got introduced to cryptocurrency and blockchain through Ethereum, and there are very matured tools and infrastructures for both users and developers to use under the EVM umbrella. And what we do is actually introducing these tools to Bitcoin builders, to Ethereum users to access. If there is a wrapped version of an ordinal art piece for you to trade, and you can basically have some kind of exposure to a wrapped version of ruins or BRC20 assets, you're probably going to dump it the next day if you're a degen anyway. So there's no point if you're just doing speculation. There's no point of you doing that kind of things in the base layer, and there's also no tools to support more advanced like DeFi functionality on the base layer. So this kind of functionality, we can see that happening on something like Bob, which is the Ethereum layer for people who don't use Bitcoin for store of value. And on the other hand, we also provide tools for people who do want to do that. For example, with I want to talk about this Bitcoin as settlement layer. Imagine we have this light client on top of Bob, which is an Optimism rollup. And there's a case where we can do a peer-to-peer trade for UTXO. Either it's native Bitcoin or native ordinal, like say you have a node monkey and you want to sell it to me. And you post the order on here, say, I want to sell this node monk, and I can accept not only Bitcoin, I can also accept stablecoin or Ethereum. Then more people will be able to buy it. And me, on the other hand, I see this this post, then I would say I want to buy it, and I can send my USDT or my Ethereum into this smart contract that is locked, not custodial by anyone. It's a smart contract. And this, like, once this is sent, you as the seller will know, okay, the buyer has already sent the fund. And then you can feel safe to send the node monkey to my Bitcoin address. And once this transaction happened, the UTXO the sats went from your wallet to my wallet. The light client will be able to verify it. It will be able to know, and it will automatically trigger the smart contract to release the USDT or Ethereum or whatever asset you want into your Ethereum wallet. In this way, there is no bridging involved. We did a trade. My USDT never left Ethereum, and your Bitcoin never left Bitcoin. So this is a very tiny example of some things that we can do to bridge the two worlds together and kind of enable transactions between assets that used to not be able to interact with each other. There's a lot more. I can go on forever, but I want to actually hear from you because, yeah.
What we're trying to do is not, let's say, build a layer 2 or something like that. What we're trying to do is make it much more easier to express what you actually want to do with your Bitcoin. Because, yes, layer 2s are about lower transaction fees, better computation and so on, but it's also about the ability to run other kinds of VMs in this particular case. And frankly speaking, in my opinion, the EVM is not a good VM, right? If we can actually... And why should Bitcoin take this completely insane 256-bit virtual machine and use it in its completely broken form on Bitcoin when they can move on to something like, let's say, RISC-V, that's actually well documented, has well test cases, and it's not made by people who thought it was fun to make a VM, right? So this is what we do. Imagine you can actually do something, compile your Rust or your JavaScript and run it and let it manage your Bitcoin and actually build real applications on it. If something like BitVM or Opcat had existed back then, Vitalik would not have needed to do Ethereum. We would have built a world computer on Bitcoin. So maybe we can get back to that.
I mean, he kind of tried. So I worked with the team that did colored coins, and he was, involved in the white paper for that and things. And I mean, this goes back to the culture thing. Bitcoiners didn't really want it. So colored coins was a cool experiment. Rootstock was a great experiment, but I think that the problem was the culture wasn't there, the mentality wasn't there yet. If you were to launch a token on colored coin or on Rootstock, the Bitcoiners would say you're a fucking scammer. So like, why would you want to build on it, right? So yeah, it's cool to see the culture changing though.
I want to comment on this. First of all, I do agree with there's a big cultural change because people were not ready. People didn't have like the understanding of Bitcoin or didn't experience trauma like, the pandemic to fully establish the idea of using Bitcoin. But unlike, sidechains that existed before now, like Rootstock and Stacks, for example, they're amazing projects that have really like done so much research and have so much thought into every layer of this. But one of the things why it doesn't scale, like why the volume is so low, people don't use it, is because you as a user, you have to have very specific wallet and tools to use their network. As a developer with, for example, Stacks, you have to learn a completely brand new programming language. There's really, really high onboarding expense for both users and developers. And what I think what rollups is really amazing, not just for Bitcoin, but also for everything, is because it's compatible. Like the same kind of dApps, the same application, you can use it under different chains. And this way, for example, we built like a MetaMask Snap, which allow people to manage their Taproot address under MetaMask wallet, under the same seed phrase that you would have used for your Ethereum wallet. And this is one less step for someone who want to buy, for example, Bitcoin or ordinals to get on board.
It's funny. I think we got a little riff here on the stage actually, because the two gentlemen to my left were kind of getting digs at EVM. And like, so look, we know EVM may not be the best. Like, look, there's lots of things in the world, in early internet and early pieces of the layers of the internet that were not ideal, and we found better things later. It didn't matter because they worked good enough and everybody was already using them. So I am kind of with you on this. I think EVM is a requirement, and great if people can build other things not using EVM, using other VMs, awesome. But so far in the industry, out of 1,000 projects that tried to go away from EVM, maybe 5 actually got any traction at all. So I think it is, EVM is a thing, and there will be different flavors, which is great. We could all build different flavors. I'm going, not me, but we're incubating zkBTC. zkBTC is going EVM focus, right? A full EVM, MetaMask, do all that stuff with trustless bridges and things to Bitcoin for ordinals, just very similar to what Bob is doing. I think that's a cool flavor, but I think other people will do different things. But I want to hear your guys', I want to give you a chance to defend yourselves on your...
No, there's nothing to defend, right? If anything, that it is as successful despite talk to anyone who has been, in crypto for more than 5 minutes and is worth his salt. They'll tell you this as a piece of technology is not the right way to do it. It has, immense deficiencies. The fact that it is today still your best choice, despite all that, is a testament to its position, right? So you have to be EVM compatible now because it does represent the lowest barrier to entry for anyone who's already been working in crypto. And so it can both things can be true, that it is a hot piece of garbage and that it has a critical mass of tooling relative to any other ecosystem, right? And actually, if you talk about one thing the Bitcoiners would say, well, Bitcoin has the most security, everything has to come back to Bitcoin. Well, what about smart contract risk and those other things? Now, as you're starting to talk about adding programmability, the EVM is a much more secure environment to build in because there is, tens of thousands of security researchers with great experience. There's, a plethora of available tooling. There's, and so in that sense, I do think you're right in this, it is somewhat of a requirement. I wouldn't make it a hard requirement, but it's definitely the path of least resistance insofar as getting adoption for your product, because as Zhixi was saying, it's much easier for developers to interact with. It's much easier for the broader ecosystem to interact with. Exchanges already know how to work with the EVM. They know how to work with ERC20s. The time to support the next ERC20 is in the seconds. The time to support anything else, you're talking about days, weeks of engineering time. And so pretty much, other than the fact that it is not the best product per se, everything around it is so well solidified that it makes it very hard to use anything else. I think the Cosmos ecosystem has been around just as long, almost, as Ethereum. The state of tooling in Cosmos, call it, 2017, so give it, a 2-year head start. But there's I would say 2 orders of so IBC was 21, but written in 17. Cosmos, starting around 17. So Cosmos was around before IBC launched. But still, the state of Cosmos tooling, I would say, is at least 2 orders of magnitude away from what Ethereum is. And that just so much more difficult for anyone who wants to support anything in that ecosystem. And if you're taking kind of a very objective view to it, you'd say, well, if nothing else, Cosmos is the third largest ecosystem in crypto. And for the third and the first to have such a wide disparity is shocking. And so, of course, if you're trying to build something accessible around Bitcoin and have it accessible more for just like holding this asset, EVM is the way to go.
And just all the things you can do with it, just really quick, is like, you can do royalties out of the box. You can do, NFT marketplaces out of the box, collateral out of the box, because it's all already there. But yeah.
So I agree there are some severe limitations to the EVM, though the best product doesn't always mean product market fit. It has product market fit. I love is that the world is going modular, and that means we're seeing all these different parts providers segregating the tech stack, and that means people are innovating, meaning failing forward, seeing what works. You have movement like MoveVM. You have Fuel with the different execution layers that are light years faster, and I love people starting to tool with that. The dev tooling's not there. EVM has dev tooling. Hold on. And then you have all these different things that people are going to fail. Almost everyone's going to fail, and then we're going to have some learnings from it, and that's exactly how the internet scaled. And it's going to be thousands of different app chains and different microservices, how it still scales today. And the work we're doing right now, the failure we're doing right now, will support like the next version of the internet. And that's fucking cool because we're all just like innovating.
I would say not only that, the work that you guys are doing at Avail, so EVM has all of its problems. Now, because of its success, there are people in indirect and direct ways fixing little portions of those problems that make it an increasingly usable product. And so if you think of what Avail is doing, what Celestia, Eigenlayer are all doing with their different DA products, this is a way to augment something that's sorely missing in the EVM proper. And so obviously we're very biased at Hyperlane with the modular approach, but it's clearly like a way to scale this thing that has many issues in the EVM. And so look, fortunately, we're running out of time. So this has been a great panel. Thanks to everyone for participating. We had a lot of fun, and enjoy the rest of your night.